welcome once again to another episode 2 of Ed on the Bed. This is Ed, I'm on a bed, and this is a podcast. The first episode was, as I mentioned, an origin story. It went 2 hours. For those of you who heard it, a few of you hit me up, told me you did. Godspeed, I guess. Although y'all did tell me y'all kind of skipped through it, but all good. Y'all got some good points out of it, and I appreciate it. I'm glad you were entertained. Hopefully I can continue to entertain. Second episode here. I kind of want to go, as you can see the title, Modern Love. So let's go with the intro song for today. Go ahead and just pull up David Bowie, Modern Love. I don't know if you guys ever seen the video. It's just basically him there, I guess at a concert, all dressed up, all ladies, and his dancing. I mean, I enjoy me some good David Bowie. Modern Love is my favorite song of his. But you have Rebel Rebel, you have Space Oddity, you have Let's Dance, China Girl. But if you think you have Under Pressure with him and Queen, but if you think about about if you think about his songs, Let's Dance, and you think about the other song he did with Mick Jagger, of Dancing in the Streets, this guy just is a horrible dancer. One of the worst dancers I've ever seen. Just look at his videos. Maybe because he's a little gangly, he's a little tall, and he just doesn't have the moves. But come on, man, if you're gonna dedicate songs about dancing, get some moves, bro. Not that I should be talking, but I mean, I'm not coming up with songs about dancing. I might write a few things here and there, but I ain't writing about dancing. I know that much. So, anyways, Modern Love, and I think that'll be the topic about this episode, which kind of leaves off to what I was talking about at the end of the first episode, which was how girls, at least the girls that I kind of run into here at the bars and the clubs, are like. One of the things, as I mentioned in the last one, I mentioned that I'll go to bars, I'll go to clubs, and I'll usually have the RG girl come up to me, and this happens at least once a week. And the first thing out of their mouths, and these are girls that I don't know, I've never talked to, they just come up to me, and as cute or attractive as it might be, the first thing out of their mouths is, can I have a drink? Can I have a sip? Can I have one of the shots you have? Can I have a glass from the bottle you're sharing amongst everyone here? It's basically gimme, 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 and nothing of, hey, how are you? Nice to meet you. My name is so and so. Nothing of that. And again, I don't consider that to be how everyone is. I think that's just the scene I'm in and the place that I'm at. So I related to that, and I understand that, but it's weird to see that it's gotten to that point, because I mean, going to a bar or a club, you would always think, and maybe it's an Argentina thing or Buenos Aires thing, I don't know, because I do know how aggressive guys are here to girls, so maybe girls tend to become aggressive as well, or that just much more forward. But you would think up till a few years ago it was us, the guys, having to go ahead and approach girls and having to hit on them or use a pickup line, or just talk to them or whatever the case may be. And it's looking to me as like the roles are being reversed there, but more to straight to the point. And is that a good thing? I don't know. I do not. I do not know. I guess time will tell. Um, but yeah, I also think about it's funny how this is because the role reversal. And just speaking of that, just I think of my parents, for instance, and I think back in the 50s and the 60s or 70s, whatever, not to age my parents, but I'm just throwing out years, decades. Um, you met your high school sweetheart. I mean, you met your girl because she was your high school sweetheart, or she was your college sweetheart, or you guys met through friends, mutual friends, or family members. You met through mutual uh, mutual people that you knew, um, or through work. But there was only certain circles that you would meet people, and that it would be acceptable. And from there on out, you would be, that's it. I'm stuck with these people. Like, I don't think in those times you'd hear about, maybe a woman have said that she, prior to her husband, she was probably in 3 or 4 relationships, or a guy to say the same. I think there was, you hooked up with someone, you dated, and that was it, and you're meant to be with this person, and you got to work on it. You got to work on it, even if it's not perfect, and you guys get into arguments. You got to keep on working on it and working on it and working on it, and that's it. And it's weird to think that I remember being a kid and and growing up in New Orleans, and this is a very Catholic religious community that I grew up in the area of New Orleans that I lived in, and it was very rare to see other kids with divorced parents, and the few that were divorced, I would always look at them like what happened and what was wrong there. And looking at it now, just I know, I mean, that was New Orleans. I don't know how the rest of the world was or the rest of this country was, but I'd like to think that from a span of more than 25 years, 30 years, 40 years, maybe, how much more accepted divorce has been, uh, or annulments, or people being separated, or just not having to just date someone for the rest of your life, or just be stuck with someone for the rest of your life. Um, and I don't know what exactly caused that change. I don't think you could point it out to one thing. If anything, at least for me growing up, I noticed the 90s was very liberated. A lot of people would probably say the 70s or whatever, the 60s, 70s with the hippies and all, but I saw it more as the 90s, and just how I blame it, and this will age me, I guess, but I'll blame it to MTV. And at the time, there was this show called Sex in the 90s, during the 90s. You could probably look it up on YouTube. And it was these shows, and they had one once every like 2 or 3 months, I guess. And it was these documentaries about like fetishes and people trying to live their life as being single, or people having like cheating on their relationships, and it was being publicized. And to see that, I think a lot of people, a lot of young people especially, were saying, wow. And there was other documentary, I think there was one on HBO as well that kind of did the same thing, and showed different showed sexual liberation, I guess. And I think that affected a lot of people, a lot of young people, and I think that opened up uh, at least the culture in the States to explore yourself and explore other opportunities than the monogamous relationships that you're set to be bound on, or what you see in, I guess, previously in movies, or what you saw your parents be. And I'm not giving all the credit to them, of course not. I just think that it was one of the many things, and if I think entertainment and culture helped evolve that. I'm sure there was other stuff that I didn't notice because of my age, but that helped evolve that as well, to where we are now, where and I this is my theory, my opinion, but I think the majority of relationships do not last more than anywhere between 2 to 5 years. Um, where I could honestly say that someone would feel truly in love with their partner. Um, and that's a bold statement to make, especially because I know some of y'all might be in a relationship, might be married, or who knows. Um, and y'all will probably prove me wrong. I'm not, like I said, that's just a theory, and I'm saying most people. You might be some of the few that aren't like that. But again, there's 7 billion people in the world, and there's a lot of them that are married. So who am I to know or say what is true or what is not? I just feel that there's a lot of people in loveless marriages, loveless relationships, and they just put up with it because they're accustomed to it and they're just used to it. And it's better to be content than to be happy, or to risk finding happiness once again. And that's a weird statement to make because you're not really happy, you're content. You might have had happiness once. And no, I'm not saying no. I'm not kind of hinting on anything previously. I just it's something that I just started thinking, but yeah, it is weird. But if I think about dating nowadays, for instance, growing up in New Orleans, for instance, and I was a kid back then, but the way we would date as a kid, we would have these dances, school dances, and the school dances were called sock hops, and yeah, they were called sock hops because that's the cute name that dances were called back in the doo-wop age of the 40s and the 50s. And for some reason, parents and grandparents thought it was still cute and cool to call it sock hops. So we would go to these sock hops that they'd have either at the school or they'd have at the local park or something. And you'd ask the girl out, or you'd ask them to go to the school fair, or the county fair, the parish fair actually. And that was that. And the girl would be like your girlfriend, and you'd hold hands, and you'd maybe kiss every so often, and that was that. And that was corny and cute and adorable, and it seemed appropriate at the time, especially at our ages where we were all, at the time I was 11, 12, and then moving to Miami. Moving to Miami was a completely different just world, because all of a sudden I moved to Miami, and yeah, this was already, I'm getting closer to high school, but already you're here. I'd be in 7th grade, 8th grade, and I'm already hearing about, people already having sex, and this girl hooks up with anybody. Dude, you gotta talk to that girl because that girl does this and that. And it was a completely different world that I came from. I'm not saying that there was more values. Maybe there was, I don't know. There was more values in New Orleans, but it was surprising. It wasn't holding hands and just kissing. It became, cunnilingus and surprisingly anal and like just shit that you just did not expect to know about or hear about or know that people did at that age. Um, and yeah, and it was a change, and it changed just from moving one day to the next, and give it a few months until I got used to school, and then it that's when you start hearing all these things, and it was like it when you're hitting puberty and uh you're loving anything that has to deal with sex, and you're horny all the time, and you're hearing all this, it's crazy. And then you think about, see, nowadays things are different because you have the internet, and with the internet you at least well, you at least with the internet now you could just look at anything, you could do anything basically, and you get your kicks off of that if you want. But back in my day, at that time, you really didn't have the internet wasn't what it is now. I mean, whew, let's see, the internet back in my day. Um, well, let's start. I didn't get into the internet until probably the last years I was in New Orleans, and you'd have to buy this program. You'd go to the computer software store, which is like Electronic Boutique, or there was another one, I forgot the name of it, but you'd have to go to like excuse me, you'd have to go to like the mall, and you go to a little store like Electronic Boutique, and it was weird because they would have three shelves. Each shelf had like 10 boxes, 10 software boxes there. And for instance, the first shelf had software for like productivity stuff, like word processor or printer capabilities, or a software that could help you like calculate problems, basically stuff that already comes with your computer. They were selling it as add-on programs back then. Then the second shelf had all computer games, and they were all sucky computer games. And then the third shelf had Apple computer software. And that was it. That's all. That's all the technology that computers had back in the day available to the public. That was it. And it was it would, for the most of us, it sucked because not a lot of people had computers back then. Um, and I remember my family and I, we ended up buying like the first softwares of like internet and stuff were these three programs. One of them was CompuServe, the other one was Prodigy, and the other one was America Online. And what you had to do was you'd buy these program boxes, and these programs were costing like $50 back then. So you'd buy the box, whatever, $50. You'd get the floppy disks, you install them to your computer. Who knew how long it would take? It'd be like 2 or 3 floppy disks you had to fucking download onto your computer and install. And then you had to connect, you'd have to have a modem, or you had to use your phone line, which sucked because if you had an incoming call, forget it. Your internet thing would just drop. So usually you were paying for a second phone line just for the internet, if you were that lucky to do so. And then so you'd have to pay for a second phone line. Then you'd also have to pay for a like signing up, a registration membership fee, which is usually around like $20 or something, or $25. And then what would happen is, and you'd have to pay that monthly. You'd have to pay that monthly, and then what that would do is you would get 60 minutes free to use online, and then each additional minute would cost you like $2 or $3, something like that. which is ridiculous because back then nothing would download on time and everything would take forever, and it was really annoying. So you'd waste your minutes immediately, and it just wasn't. If you were on the internet back then, it was as cool, as innovative, and as not much people had it. Uh, it was still pretty fucking stupid to own it just because of how expensive it was. But some of us did, and whatever. I ended up starting off with Prodigy, and we had Prodigy, and you'd sign up to Prodigy, you log in, and all you'd have was access to these message boards. And these message boards were they were very political or very religious. It wouldn't stem from one or the other, or maybe, or if not technological, like it would talk about computers and stuff. But if not, that was basically it. So I think I used Prodigy for probably 2 weeks, and then we just stopped using it because there was no point in it. We then tried CompuServe, same thing, message boards, nothing interesting, and that after a week or two, we just stopped using it. And then came America Online. That was different. America Online, you signed up, and you'd have the message boards, you'd have profiles. Eventually, later, the instant messaging system kind of started working, and that was also cool. But in the beginning, it really wasn't there. And then, but what really was there from the beginning were the chat groups and the chat rooms. And if the AOL chat rooms were notorious, because they would talk about anything and everything. So when you're a young kid, 13, 14 years old, I'm already hearing freaky shit in school, mind you. So I'd go home, get on the computer, and it would be fucking freaky shit times a million. You had chat rooms for every fetish there was. People are sending all tons of different kinds of pornography all over the place. If you've there's shit that I've seen that I just did not know was someone's thing, someone's fancy. Some weird shit, and and then I remember, if you weren't, people were sending any kinds of stuff. So if it wasn't weird porn, you were seeing like gruesome shit, like Faces of Death, like videos and shit like that. Which, if you don't know what Faces of Death is, don't look it up. I wouldn't want you to look it up. I'll tell you what it is. It's videos of like people dying and people getting killed and run over by a train, or just like gruesome acts. That's very disturbing, and people were just exchanging it over the internet like it was nothing. And then the other thing that you get a lot was the Anarchist Cookbook, which the Anarchist Cookbook, I also wouldn't want you to look this up because you probably would get, I'm sure the NSA would get you or something. But the Anarchist Cookbook was like they would tell you how to like create a bomb, or how to like pick locks. It was basically anything illegal. That book would tell you how to do it, and anything illegal and dangerous, and anything that would cause riots or chaos or whatever, that would be the book. I highly frown upon that book, and I do not have a book like that, nor did I ever download it. Just to clarify that. And I remember, and that's what was being exchanged, and it got to the point where AOL finally realized, all right, look, we should probably start moderating these chat rooms, and they did, and good, because I think if not, it would have just kept being chaos. And so that kind of cleared things up. But then And then they added instant messages and everything, and it started getting more structuralized, and it had more of a foundation, and AOL kind of just became way better than what Prodigy was or CompuServe was. Um, and I remember you then go use the chat rooms, and in high school we were using the chat rooms. Everyone was in the chat rooms, but what everyone was doing was you'd go to, I was in Miami at the time, so everyone would go to the city chat room, which was the Miami chat room. There was like 20-25 of these chat rooms, so you'd go into the chat room, and it was basically all high school kids. There wasn't really much predators back then. At least no one knew of any. So they were actually all just pretty much high school kids on it. So you'd go into the chat room and you'd say, "Hey, what's up? My name is Eddie," and then you'd put your age, gender, location, and if you had pictures or not. And then you'd say a little bit about yourself, like what school you're from or whatever. And you'd usually just talk to people, and you'd start shit with someone from another high school, or you'd start hitting on girls or whatever the case may be, or you'd start promoting parties or whatever, and that was the little scene that you would do, and it worked. At first it worked because everyone was honest, and all the profiles were real, and then sure enough, give it a couple of times, and then people started creating fake profiles, and people were being a lot more demanding on pics and stuff like that, and it became a whole mess. Um, so that was the online scene at that time. There, my high school age, and so during my junior year, junior high school and in high school, um, and even I think the only cool thing about my high school and about the high school in South Florida was there was a lot of all ages parties, and there was a lot of promotions. And what I mean is there was a lot of these party organizations that would organize these parties. It was basically kids who maybe had like an older brother or two, and the older brother would get the kids to all put in money, because these were all rich kids anyways. They would all put in money, and they would rent out a club. And I'm not talking like a ballroom or just like a conference room somewhere or something. No, they would rent out clubs on South Beach and everything, and they would throw their all ages parties, so they wouldn't be able to sell alcohol inside the club, though everyone was getting drunk outside in the parking lot or something, or doing drugs or whatever. But it was all ages, and you could imagine how insane this was. Like there was probably a party every weekend. Depending on what neighborhood you were from, you could find a party every weekend. Because some of these parties were only meant for kids. For instance, there was groups like Trip Tonight, Up All Night, House of Style, Players, Partiers, Element of Sound. I'm sure there were several more. I can't remember the names of every organization, but they were kind of like crews, and like certain crews would only promote to like, oh, these guys would only promote to the kids in Hialeah and Miami Lakes and Northwest State, and then there was other groups that would only promote to the Southwest and Kendall and that whole area and the Grove and Coral Gables. So there was always this kind of like north-south battle when it came to these parties. But if you knew the right people, you'd get invited either way, and you're going to these parties every weekend. And just imagine, like, you're a kid, you're in Miami, you're going to the clubs that you're not old enough to go to, but you pay the right people enough, and you can get in. You'd be getting drunk in the parking lot, or you'd be getting high, and that was it, man. I mean, you were already clubbing at like 15, 16 years old, and it was insane. And it was already, you were already like hooking up with girls and taking them, taking it. There was places that, there was already hourly rates motels that didn't give a fuck. They just needed to, they keep the doors open so they'd take your money. And it was insane how young it started and how illegal it all is, and how, unfortunately, how blind, I guess, as a parent, if you're a parent, how blind you are to this world, because basically you're just thinking your nice young daughter or your responsible son is staying over at a friend's house, and lo and behold, they're just, who knows what the fuck they're doing. And I mean, I think that's always been the case, but I think more so now. And it's I think it'd be easier to, if kids were upfront with what they were doing. Like my parents knew I was drinking at that age, so I don't think it was like that big of a deal. I wasn't that bad of a drinker, but um, but I think it was all right, and I think my parents appreciated it, knowing what I was doing, at least half of the time. Um, so that was pretty much high school, and I was already in the club scene and drinking and getting fucked up. And before you know it, when I was already in the college scene, you had kids joining like fraternities and sororities, and at that point I was like, why am I gonna go to a house party uh where I gotta like bring my own beer or whatever, when I got one of my friends DJing at a club and we're gonna get bottles for free? I think I'm gonna go to the club. And that was that was one of the cool things. I mean, South Beach, as hard as you think it is to get into the clubs, like I mentioned, it's just it helped that I knew a lot of people, and a lot of people that work at the beach and worked at these clubs were all local people, and these were all local kids, and these were all people that you knew from high school or from other high schools or were friends of friends, and so you'd have the hookups to basically anywhere you wanted to go. Um, so it never made any sense to go to house parties or to go rush for this group and then or rush for that. So I kind of stayed out of that scene and just went straight into clubbing and all that, which was awesome. Um, and I remember the only thing that I kind of got into, which I'd learned in college, was MySpace. And when MySpace came out, it was it was amazing, because here you have, and to be fair, America Online kind of had the same system where it was, you could fill up, each account had its own profile, and you could actually fill out the profile and say how old you are and where you're from, and you describe yourself, and you could actually upload pictures to that profile so people could see you, and that was all on America Online. But no one really knew how to use it, and you could actually search through people and find people around your neighborhood and how old they are, and all the search criteria they had in MySpace. But no one really knew how to use it, and excuse me, and I think they dropped the ball there, and I think maybe that's what MySpace kind of learned, because they just said, well, we could just start a community where people can upload their profiles, say who they are, they could search for other people that are the same, and who knows, maybe they could hook up, maybe they can make friends, whatever the case would be. Fuck it, we'll give them the option. And I remember joining, and it was so easy and so cool on how to meet people. Because, and again, at the beginning of MySpace, everyone was who they were. There weren't any fake profiles yet. There wasn't any need to create fake profiles. And I even remember just how, like, I remember meeting Tom. And for those of you who don't know who Tom is was the first friend you make on MySpace. He's the first friend you make on MySpace because he's the co-founder of MySpace,
and his profile was basically like the generic MySpace official profile. So you would automatically be friends with Tom, and every so often you'd get news from Tom saying, "Oh, there's a new feature on MySpace," or "There's this," it's automated. So it really wasn't Tom that you were talking to, but it was still his profile, and it was kind of egotistical of him for him to advertise himself as the MySpace owner, if you think about it. So, anyways, he also would hit up a couple of the message boards on MySpace, and he would hit up each city's MySpace message board. And there was a time right when it was getting popular that he had the opportunity to travel to all the big cities and throw these MySpace parties or MySpace get-togethers where he'd invite everyone from MySpace. Hey, let's all find a place or a club or a bar. We'll all get drunk. We'll all have fun. We'll all meet each other. How about it? And sure enough, one day he decided to do it in Miami. And so we all went. It was on a Monday night, I remember. And we all chose, if I'm correct, stuff. Man, I forgot the name of the bar already. But it was like a reggae night at the bar. I remember that. And we all went there, and there was Tom. For a guy who was rich, he wasn't hooking it up with drinks, or he wasn't doing anything, like a rich asshole would be doing. But I will say this about Tom. Tom was surrounded by a lot of hot Asian chicks. And although there's a lot of hot chicks in South Florida, there's not a lot of Asian chicks in South Florida. So, and I knew Tom was coming from the West Coast. So Tom was flying around with a whole bunch of Asian, like, automobile, like, pinup models. You know, the ones that, like, the Asian chicks that, like, pose for those car magazines, like the Honda Civics and the Acura RXSs and all that. Yeah, he was flying around with a whole bunch of them. And I knew one of them, because one of them was Tia Tequila, who at the time was famous because she had the most friends on MySpace. And later, if you want to look her up, she kind of had her own MTV reality show, and then she kind of had she had a nervous breakdown, and now I don't know what she's doing. She's crazy though. And all the other chicks were just like models, and you knew he was flying them around, so it was very interesting to see what he was doing with all those millions of dollars, and that he had an Asian fetish. So and not I mean I don't blame him, but yeah, that was interesting to see. Let's see. I was still trying to remember the name of that bar. Anyways, in MySpace, man, I was meeting a lot of girls off of MySpace, and I remember I met this one girl. I don't remember her name, but we hit it off, and she tells me to go meet her up at Dadeland Mall. So I go ahead and I head over to Dadeland Mall to go meet her up. No, it wasn't Dadeland Mall, Dolphin Mall. And we go to Dolphin Mall. And before we go into the mall, she tells me, "Oh, let's just hang out here in the parking lot for a bit." And I'm like, "All right, cool, whatever. I don't know what you're up to, but you're cute, so I'm not gonna say no." And she goes ahead and she starts smoking a joint, and she offers it to me, and I'm like, "Oh, all right, fuck it, I got nothing better to do, so sure." I don't know what was in that joint, but for the rest of the day, we walked into the mall, and I was bumping into every fucking person that was around me, and I was a complete just zombie, I remember. And it was basically this girl leading me by the hand. Like, you ever seen that picture of It's like those famous Instagram pictures where it's the guy taking the picture while the girl's walking ahead and they're holding hands, and it's all cute and adorable because it's different scenarios. Well, that was me, but it was in a mall filled with people, and I'm like knocking down kids, and and tripping over strollers, and I know some people were pushing me out of the way just because I was just out of it, and it got bad to the point where I think she realized it, and she took me back to her car, and we're chilling at her car. We're just sitting there, and she just keeps saying like how nice I am and everything, and she's looking at me, and she's kind of leaning in, and she's been leaning in for the longest, and I know she's, and I'm even telling myself, oh, she wants to make out, and I'm just staring at her, and she just keeps trying to like get closer to me to like make out, and she's like kissing my cheek and stuff like that, and I'm still not getting it, because that's how, or I mean I get it, but I'm not reacting to it. That's how messed up I was. And she finally, it's like, well, all right, I think I'm gonna go home. And she tries one more time, and I'm just, I see her lean towards me, and I'm like, okay, and I just walk out of the car while she completely kisses air, and then I get into my car, and then I realize, damn, she was trying to make out with me. So I get out of my car, head back to her car, and she's already gone. Needless to say, I never heard from that girl ever again. But yeah, there was all kinds of funny and cool experiences from MySpace. And I even there was one relationship there was one girl that I was in a relationship with actually for a while, and that didn't work out, and then after her, I kind of just did not attempt to date people off of MySpace anymore, and just started going out more because I just did not want to trust online anymore. I felt it was better to just meet people, uh, like out in the real world. So I ended up getting the confidence to just kind of go up to girls, like at the supermarket or at the bookstore or at the mall or whatever, and I think that eventually helped when I finally met the mother of my child, and how I met her and everything. But I had felt that was better, and after I broke up with my ex, I kind of lost all those abilities. Like, it's just I whatever courage I had back then, I could never do that ever again now. And especially here in Buenos Aires, where guys are already aggressive as it is, that the few times that I have tried it, it's already shot down before I even get to do anything, because they're just expecting me to say some rude comment like every other guy does in this city. So would my comments be rude? No, I don't think so. But I guess we'll never know. So, but yeah, the MySpace, and I think I left MySpace at the right time, because at that time also, then a lot of more fake profiles were coming out, and a lot of my friends were telling me like, no, I went out to go meet this girl, and she ended up being like not who she said she was or whatever, or who she looked like, and it was a whole thing, and they were Photoshop was becoming very popular, and no, so then Facebook came out, and Facebook kind of just, although it's a social media and you could add people and maybe meet new people, it's very hard, and I think that's a good thing. So good for Facebook. As for dating now, like, you look at the apps that we have, and there's apps like for instance on my phone, I'll tell you right now, on my phone I got Tinder, and I got another program called Happn, spelled Happn, and a lot of people have these. A lot of single people and some people that aren't single also have these programs on their phone, and it's weird how easy it, how more accepted this is now than what it was before to like try to use technology to get dates or whatnot. And I look at for instance Tinder. Tinder is just basically I look at one picture, and from this one picture I'm supposed to decide if I'm into you or not. And maybe I could go ahead and click on the picture, and maybe you might have 4 or 5 more pictures. Maybe I might see who we have friends in common or what we have in common. Maybe there's a description of you, but in most cases there isn't that. And in most cases I just got to take it as front value and decide from your name, your age, and your picture whether I'm going to swipe left or I'm going to swipe right. And well, I got some rules. The rules are if the picture is you, if the profile picture is you in the Eiffel Tower, I'm swiping left. That's it. There's so many pictures of you girls, of you standing in front of the Eiffel Tower. I've had enough. I get it. You went to Paris. How nice of you. Fucking, you should have stayed there. I'm swiping left. Deal with it. There's the one where a lot of girls take the picture and they're with other girls, so you don't know who the girl is. So that's usually a swipe left. Some guys do that too. I have a certain friend named Cesar who I remember seeing him use his Tinder, and I noticed that it was a picture of him and our friend Andy. That was his main profile picture. And Andy is a tall, blonde German dude. And so when I think people swipe right for Cesar, they're not swiping right for Cesar, they're swiping right for Andy. But that's just a theory I have. And whatever. I just feel like if you're gonna put a picture, make sure it's you. Or if it's a group picture, make sure you're the one who stands out, or that it's obvious that you're the profile picture. If not, I'm swiping left. If it's a picture of you with your cat, I'm swiping left. No offense if you're a cat owner, but don't put your cat in the profile picture. Just don't. There's already stereotypes of crazy cat women, and I know my nickname was Catman at one point, but it wasn't because I was fond of cats. So I'm swiping left if you have a cat, or a dog too, especially if it's like a Chihuahua or a Pomeranian or something like that. Left. Also, if you're putting a funny face, like a funny face or just something that is not appealing, like I get it, you're trying to show your funny side, but I'm not sure how that's gonna help with someone swiping right. So I'm gonna swipe left there. So yeah, and I think that's about it when it comes to me swiping left. The rest I leave it to what my criteria usually is. But those are the generic ones that I think a lot of other people agree with me, or at least talking with other guys, we've all kind of agreed on that those are always swipe left scenarios. What I've heard though, and this is from a lot of guys, and I agree with them, is that Tinder doesn't seem to be as popular, doesn't work as well as it does in other cities and countries, compared to here in Buenos Aires. And my theory is girls here don't know how to use it, or most girls on here know how to use it. I think the confusion is that a lot of these girls think that they get notified when someone likes them, and they don't realize that they need to swipe right and the guy needs to swipe right. So when there's a match, they're notified. Instead, I think some just create a profile and think they're going to be notified, and that's not how it works. But we've had that argument with a lot of guys, because there's a lot of guys that I know here, and these are some of these guys are even like good looking guys that would say that they, what's going on here, this is weird, and they just quit Tinder because they just get frustrated of it. So that's where Happn comes around, and I think Happn's a better program, because it's kind of like Tinder, but you walk around and it tells you either click like X or heart, and obviously you could tell what means what, and it shows you that you walk by, you passed them 30 minutes ago, and maybe you could hit them up. And I've had much more luck on that than I had on Tinder. And but it's weird how many people I see that have Tinder, and weird to see how many people have Happn and all these other programs, and think that this is what dating has evolved to, when and that these are my options, because my options are either do what I usually do, which is go out to the clubs and go out to the bars and meet mostly girls that are going to be asking for free drinks or asking for bottles or whatever, or I go out or I use online technology, and it doesn't have the same, because even when you go out on some of these dates, you kind of have all the conversations before you go on a date, because you're not going to just go on a blind date without knowing anything from a person. If you meet on Tinder, you meet on Happn, you kind of start talking, like on Facebook or on emails or instant message or WhatsApp or whatever, and by the time you're on the date, you kind of know so much about this person that there's nothing really to talk about, and that usually sucks, and I've had that happen before. So I think dating and modern love is still evolving and still trying to figure itself out. At least in my case, it is. And I think the old system is what works, where you just meet a nice girl somewhere, from, well, I wouldn't say my job, but I would say, you meet a nice girl at the park or at the supermarket, and see where it goes. And if it wasn't for how here all the dudes are buitres, or vultures in English, maybe that would work, but it doesn't. So again, I think the modern love is a weird one, and it's still evolving, and I guess eventually we'll figure it all out. But yeah, I still have the theory that I believe relationships would only last anywhere between 2 to 5 years, and maybe I'll prove even myself wrong one of these days. Who knows? But for now, this is it. So yeah, I don't know how long I've been talking now and rambling on about my theories here. Almost an hour, and I think I'll leave it at that. Hopefully by next episode, I'm gonna go ahead and have a guest. I think I'm already figuring out how to record like a Skype call. So I might call someone internationally and see how that comes out. And load that up. I'm gonna try to start filling these up as much as possible, because if I stop, I feel I'll just stop, and I won't continue doing this. So I'm gonna try to do as many as I can. So I guess until next time, please check this one out. Also, if you hadn't checked out the first episode, please do so. And I'm gonna keep doing these until I get bored, I guess. And I hope y'all enjoy. And also, just add on. I mean, I upload these and I share them there. So if you got anything that you want to add or comment on or question, just you could click on the reply there, click on a comment, and just write what you want to say. And I'd like to hear what some of y'all think. So until then, I guess I'll let y'all know when the next one comes out. Alright, take care. Thanks for listening.